It's time for your Political Maniacs. This week's Political Maniac is South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman. At a meeting with constituents last Friday, Norman pulled out a loaded handgun and placed it on the table for several minutes. Yes, indeed, America, it is true. He argued to the folks there that placing the firearm on the table made them safer. Unfortunately, that's not how they felt. One woman told the Washington Post that Norman's behavior is not what responsible gun ownership looked like. Others said they felt intimidated and uncomfortable. When asked about the incident, Representative Norman said, "I'm not going to be a Gabby Giffords. I don't mind dying, but whoever shoots me better shoot well, or I'm shooting back." Let's take a closer look at this week's political maniac. I mean, America, I really wish I was making this up. But in the post-Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, in the post-YouTube shooting era, in the post-Aurora, in the post-Sandy Hook, in the post-congressional baseball shooting, and do you want me to continue? In the post-shooting of two members of Congress in this decade, America, have been shot. Steve Scalise, Gabby Giffords have been shot. And you have a member of Congress walking around, pulling out loaded guns in constituents meetings saying, this is going to make you safer. But he's not the only jokester that is engaged in this type of behavior. Let's take a look at the last time we saw a candidate or a former member of Congress pull out a gun at a speaking event.
As it's completely false. Then I don't believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment.
That there, folks, is our friend, our good old, I don't know if I would call him a friend, but Roy Moore. In response to this lunacy, and I call it lunacy because that's exactly what it is, we have a response from Gabrielle Giffords, former Congresswoman. Here's what she said on Twitter. "Serving in Congress is about listening and leadership, not intimidation and showmanship. When leaders make constituents feel unsafe, they have no place in elected office." Congresswoman Giffords, I couldn't agree more. Let me be very clear, because I think people miss the point. Nobody wants to confiscate guns. I mean, I guess there are a very, very small majority of Americans that believe we should go around in pickup trucks and confiscate everybody's weapons. But they are a very, very, very small majority. And they don't speak for the majority of Democrats, and they don't speak for the majority of Americans. Period. Full stop. Pause. Game over. But with that being said, we do indeed have a Second Amendment in this country. And the Second Amendment in this country is just as important as every other amendment in our Constitution. Yes, indeed, America, it is true. But for all those folks who believe in the Second Amendment, for all of you out there who believe in the right to bear arms, here is what I say to you. If you believe in the right to bear arms, you should also believe in others' right to freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. You should believe in the ideal that every American should have access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for that to be a reality, that means that we should not be handing out the Second Amendment all willy-nilly. And that means that every amendment should have its limits. Now, are there laws on the books that we aren't enforcing well enough? Absolutely. So let's work together to fix them. Let's work together hand in hand, in tandem, to fix many of the broken gun safety rules already on the books. But let's also work together to create new laws on the books that adapt and work for a society that has new technology and also has new threats and new fears that we must face. America. So when a congressman has an event and pulls out a loaded gun and says, this makes you feel safer, when he knows that's not the case in our current society, he takes our country backwards. And he makes every gun owner, every responsible gun owner in this country look bad. Period. Full stop. My brother is a gun owner. His wife is also a gun owner. My father's a gun owner as well. And they are responsible gun owners. They hide, they have their weapon, they go to the gun range, they test, they fire their weapon. They lock their weapon up at nighttime. They keep their weapon away from bad people. They make sure that children don't have access to their weapon. All these things. They keep their weapon in the house for safety. I'm okay with that. But they also passed background checks. And we could be doing more to ensure that those people who deserve to have the Second Amendment have it, and limit those individuals who shouldn't have access to the Second Amendment to not have it. The carnage that rained out at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School should never have happened. The carnage that raged out at Sandy Hook should have never happened. The carnage that happens every single night on the streets of Chicago should never happen. The carnage that rains out every night on the streets of Baltimore and Detroit and Los Angeles, California and Washington, D.C. should never happen, America. And the reason why this carnage happens is because too many people who shouldn't have access to guns have access to guns, period. And let me be very clear about parsing the two things. I'm not talking about those individuals who are good, law-abiding citizens who have access to guns who got them the right way. I'm talking about those individuals who acquired their guns illegally, or those individuals who used a legal process to acquire their guns even though they don't have the mental stability, the medical stability, or the legal stability to have access to a gun. So here's what we've got to do. It is time for gun owners and gun rights activists to figure out what they can agree on. Put aside the talking points, put aside the he say, she say. Come to the table and figure out where they can agree to ensure that illegal weapons get off of our streets and to raise the standards so that good, law-abiding citizens have access to guns and those who shouldn't have access don't have access. It's a real pretty simple concept. But for us to get there, we have got to break down the silly walls made with paper mache that divide us. Bringing us full circle to our political maniac. Congressman Ralph Norman does the opposite. He literally spends his time constructing these paper mache walls. As Gabby Gifford said in her tweet, being a member of Congress is about leadership and listening. And instead of listening and being a leader, what Congressman Norman does every day is he intimidates, and he's a showman. And if we started listening, maybe Congressman Norman could be part of the solution.